Bob, who's a diligent data analyst, just learned how to import CSV data into Power BI. He was on his third cup of coffee, settling in for a late night of work when he noticed some problems with the data he had just imported into Power Query. His columns were not renamed correctly, and some of them appeared to be the wrong data type. How could he fix this? Let's find out. Welcome back to our video series on Power BI Basics, where we're teaching you how to use Power BI from the ground up. We're doing this with short, easy-to-follow tutorials that we're currently releasing daily. Today we're going to be showing you how to rename columns and change their data types in Power Query by working through 3 examples. These 3 examples are all the same CSV, but we've introduced 3 different problems. Let's jump in. In the first problem, we currently have our headers not being recognized as the column names. So in this case, our headers are in the first row. This is something that's easy to fix in Power Query. You can fix it by clicking this Use First Row as Headers button. What you'll see is that over in the Applied Steps section, when you click that button, it will have applied 3 steps. It first will have promoted the first row as headers. It then will have approximately or tried to guess at the data type of the columns. As you can see, it's done a pretty good job with this. However, it didn't recognize that our currency or our total sale column was currency. We can fix this by clicking the 1.2 and then clicking the fixed decimal number and then clicking Replace Current Step. In problem 2, we don't have any column names at all. In this case, what we have to do is we have to actually rename the columns. We can rename the columns in Power BI by double-clicking on the column name and then typing in a new name. So here I can type date, then I can type location ID, then I can type product ID, then I can type salesperson ID, then I can type quantity, and then total sales over here. You'll notice that when I do this, it creates a step called Rename Columns, and then within each one of these steps you can see that I'm renaming the columns here from column 1 to date, column 2 to location date. You can notice here that it's not creating a separate step for each time I do this, and that's because I'm applying the same function for every single time. I can also rename these applied steps by right-clicking and then selecting Rename. So in this case, I could rename this from Rename Columns to entering column names, then hitting Enter. As you can see, the one thing that this doesn't do is this doesn't update the data type of the columns. They're still all imported into strings. So that leads us into our third problem, which is how do you go through and change the data types of columns in Power BI? You can do that by clicking right here on this little icon and then selecting the appropriate data type. Since this is a date, I can select date here, and you can see it'll change the icon. Since this is a product ID, I'll leave this as numbers, same for these other 2 columns, but since this is a quantity and it can't be an integer and we can't ship half a product, I'll switch this to a whole number, and then since this is a dollar value, I'll switch this to a fixed decimal number right here. As you can see, that this all happened in the same step, very similar to how when we renamed columns. If we look at the mQuery code, and this is mQuery code by the way, you can see that it's referencing the step before it. So in this case it's referencing promoted headers, and then it's changing the data type. So here it's changing the column date to type date, here it's changing quantity to int64, and then here it's changing total sale to currency type. And that's it. That's how you can rename columns and change data types in Power Query. It's easy. If you're interested in learning more about Power BI, please subscribe. We're currently releasing a new video tutorial on Power BI every single day, and we'd be happy to have you along for the journey.